And we're rolling. So thanks, ladies and gents, for tuning into my podcast. And today I'm very excited to have a man who I look up to on the podcast. And he is very knowledgeable, and he's going to be dropping knowledge bombs galore today. And it'll be good to hear his story. So anyway, he is basically an expert when it comes to nutrition and health and numerous other things. He also he has degrees which I can't even pronounce, and qualifications, so they must be good ones. He's also been on the cover of Men's Fitness. He's a very successful entrepreneur. The guy is extremely healthy, and when it comes to health and fitness and nutrition, he's at the top of his game, which is why I brought him onto the podcast. And we're now sat in his lovely cafe in Coogee in Sydney, and I'm about to pick his brain. So welcome to the podcast, Moodi. If you could just tell us a little bit more about your background, and that'd be great, man.
Thanks, Martin, man. Pleasure to be here, and with a like-minded individual like yourself, and who's on the same page, on the same wavelength, and pursuing a career in fitness, not just purely for themselves, but genuinely likes to help others, and I've seen that happen in the gym.
Yep.
Now, going back to my background, it's a little bit of a colourful past. I didn't strategically venture into the health and fitness industry directly. It was a sort of a secondary effect.
Okay.
Primarily started in nuclear medicine, which is diagnosing cancer, which is something that someone has to do. It just wasn't for me.
Right.
It was just very, very difficult. A very difficult thing to do.
It sounds very difficult.
It's great when it's good news, and it's not a tumor. Or if it is, it's benign. It's not malignant. That's great. But sometimes it's bad news, and to stomach that and digest that, and having to break that news to a family is not something that I want to do on a day-to-day basis.
Of course, yeah.
From there, I went into a double degree in mathematics. And started teaching, opened up a tutoring centre, lecturing mathematics, tutoring. Now, people might listen to that and say, oh, wow, you must be so smart. Mathematics is the hardest course or the hardest subject out there. For me, it was an opportunity to make an earn, because everyone struggled in mathematics, whereas I didn't. So I took a lazy route. So I don't pride myself on...
I wouldn't call it lazy.
Knowing mathematics.
Don't be too hard on yourself, Mood. I wouldn't call it lazy.
Man, I did it out of purely just to pay mum's. I come from a single parent home. Mum didn't speak English, and I had 4 sisters and mum to look after. Wow. So the objective was to basically make an income to support my family. Otherwise, we'd be on the street. So mathematics was an opportunity, because everyone hates maths. You either love it or hate it, and more people hate it than love it. And that was just an opportunity in the making for me. So I jumped onto that bandwagon, and tutoring for mathematics was good money. And at the moment, at that particular time, it was something that mattered, because it meant whether the family got to have a roof over their head or got to have dinner that night. So it was imperative that I make an income, and it was a complete culture shock or a change of objective, because after uni all I wanted to do was travel and just do volunteer work, but you can't do volunteer work and support a family. So
no. So you managed to juggle all of that, and still came out the other side. But obviously you've had to put a ridiculous amount of hard work in, and your work ethic is definitely inspiring, man, honestly. And like you said, the story you have behind you, and the fact that you've become extremely successful purely through hard work and through expanding and evolving as a person, and basically applying yourself in life and learning as much as you can.
And that's what you have to do. You have to constantly assess your surroundings, assess your environment, and adapt. And if you're not dynamic in that sense, you're just going to fall behind in any industry.
For sure.
You have to brush up on your knowledge. I was competing in the INBA, International Natural Bodybuilding Association, for many years, whilst I was teaching and doing all that. So it was a natural transition, and the research component was because I was curious and I couldn't afford to buy an abundance of supplements, so I had to know which ones actually worked. There was no Google back then. I'm 39. So I had to sit in the university library and go through article after article because, the answer wasn't in Flex magazine, with all due respect. But that's more of an entertainment, form of material to me, whereas I would look at research articles after research articles, journal article after journal article to determine whether, creatine was for me, glutamine actually worked, did the creatine loading phase, was that legitimate?
Yeah, whilst we're on that topic as well, I wanted to delve a bit deeper into supplements and how effective you think they are in the grand scheme of things, because you mentioned creatine then, and as far as I'm aware, in terms of the studies, creatine has the most scientific evidence to back up it actually works, So
absolutely. Now, creatine, in terms of what it does for strength, what it does for recovery, it has an array of different benefits. And to get the quantity of creatine that the body can benefit from whole foods is very, very difficult to do. And the richest source of creatine, as we know, is red meat. And eating an abundance of red meat has been shown to be unhealthy.
Absolutely. It's not ideal for gut health, is it?
No. In 2016, the World Health Organization released a conclusive study saying that if red meat's not grass-fed, that it's not a situation of it may cause cancer, it actually does cause cancer.
Yeah, exactly.
If you consume more than 70 grams a day, which is just a mouthful for the average male.
Because obviously the cows, you're consuming what the animal consumes. So if you're eating basically a cow which is eating wheat, then not only are you consuming that, but you're consuming like the genetically modified, like the pesticides they spray the wheat with, and all the rest of it, and the hormones they pump into the cow and wherever else.
A prime example of that would be a gentleman who only weeks ago died from a penicillin overdose. And if you're allergic to penicillin, it's lethal, and that's why when you're doing surgery, when you're about to undertake surgery, one of the first questions they ask you is, are you allergic to penicillin? And if you are, it's imperative that the doctor knows. So during the recovery phase, they don't give you antibiotics. Now, this gentleman was allergic to penicillin, didn't consciously consume it, however, died from a penicillin overdose because there was a gradual build-up of it in his blood from the meat that he ate, and the hormones and antibiotics and that he was consuming subconsciously.
Jeez, it's insane. I'm glad we're on this topic now, because this is something I was going to come to a bit later down the line in the conversation. I was going to mention about how important you think it is. You've obviously you mainly just cleared up pretty much what I was going to ask you about meat, and how important it is to get good quality meat sources, grass-fed or organic or whatever. Pretty much covered that, but I was going to go into fruit and veg and go into a bit more detail about how important you think it is to get certain types of fruit and veg organic, because I'm very, very aware now, I'm very conscious about the fact that the pesticides they spray a lot of the vegetables and the fruit with, and different types. There's certain types which absorb the pesticides more, which then can trigger off higher levels of estrogen in the body, and obviously massively increase your risk of cancer and other illnesses or ailments. What's your thoughts on that, Moodi?
Man, when it comes to fruit and veg, it's a very, very touchy subject when it comes to choosing organic. I know it's expensive, but your health doesn't have a price on it. Our general health and well-being, our ability to function.
For sure, that's my message.
There's no price on it. And eating organic and eating whole foods or as natural as possible is critical. But when it comes to fruit and veg, mate, it's one of the most important things to source, because the nutrients in fruit and veg are in the skin.
Yeah.
And if the pesticides
for sure,
and all the rubbish will
absorb right into that skin.
Right into that skin. That's correct. Exactly. So if 70% of the nutrients are in the skin, and you're going to have to peel that skin because you've chosen a non-organic kiwi fruit, for instance, then you're consciously chucking out 70% of the nutrients in that whole food.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
So
not what you want to do.
kind of almost
I
defeats the
wanna-
purpose of having it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Really.
I want to buy kiwi fruit and wash it like an apple and, bite through it with the skin. And that's how I eat a kiwi
What
fruit.
about like thick-skinned fruit, like avocado, bananas, and stuff? Are they a bit? They're generally a bit safer to get non-organic. I'm just thinking because some of the listeners are not even eating. Some of them may not be eating hardly any veg, and I'm just thinking to get them started. Obviously they need to get the veg in one way or another, don't they? So like if they're umming and ahhing about getting organic veg, which ones would you say are the ones that are a bit safer?
Man, if you really spend a serious amount of time rinsing and washing your vegetables, you can get a lot of that rubbish out.
Yep.
However, when it comes to thicker skinned vegetables and fruits such as avocado, I would recommend not over peeling the inside. Well,
right.
Let's look at the example of a mandarin or an orange or a grapefruit, for instance.
Yep.
People over peel citrus fruits, and the pith that lies underneath that skin that we chuck out, the little extra bits of flesh on a banana that we chuck out, that's where all the goodness is. Now, Dr. Oz made Garcinia globally recognized, and it's a good thing, but you don't have to get it in capsule form. You don't have to get hydroxycitric acid in capsule form. Just don't over peel a grapefruit or an orange, and in that pith, in that fleshy bit underneath, in between the actual fruit and the skin, the hard skin.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's where the hydroxycitric acid lies.
Yeah.
So if you just, consciously eat that, that does wonders for your metabolism. Not only that, it actually regulates your cholesterol.
Oh, wow. That's really
Vitamin C, a high vitamin C intake was actually an interesting study based on overdosing on. This was intentionally overdosing on certain vitamins and minerals. And we know that vitamin A in excess is toxic. However, vitamin C, we've known that for a long time that it's not toxic and you just excrete whatever your body doesn't absorb. What they coincidentally found out was that it regulated the HCl-LDL relationship. So if you consume an excess of vitamin C, not only is it safe, but it can prevent you from taking... within 3 days, get you off a cholesterol medication such as Lipitor.
Wow, and awesome. Whilst we're on this topic now, there's been a lot of debate lately about saturated fat and cholesterol and stuff, and how cholesterol is really bad and it causes all these kinds. That's a very interesting topic. It is interesting. I was going to mention about the LDL and the HDLM because obviously with the HDL, this is generally the better type of cholesterol, right? But with the LDL, people think it's all bad, right?
No,
the low density.
But
it's the small density particles which are bad, right?
The same thing about saturated fat. How many labels have you seen on a packaged product in the supermarket that deconstructs different types of saturated fat?
Yeah.
Never.
But
You'll see unsaturated fat broken down into polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, but not all saturated fats are bad for you. The fats that you're consuming in coconut, they're saturated fats.
Yeah, exactly.
But
you get medium chain fatty acids
exactly,
right out of that,
but they're regulating your endocrine system.
Exactly.
They're making sure that a woman's hormonal balance is on par with fertility, with a regular cycle. For men, it's regulating your hormonal balance so that your testosterone levels are healthy. And that's saturated fat.
So some huge benefits from actually consuming a certain amount of saturated fat then.
It's the avoidance of saturated fat that's resulted in fertility clinics in every street.
There we go.
There used to be one in when I was growing up, there was one in every major city.
That's it.
Now there's a fertility clinic in every street. It's ridiculous.
That's it.
Men
and the overeating of sugar. And then as a result of that, obviously us being brainwashed over the years with all these commercials you see on the TV telling us to eat cereal and to eat, these refined sugars, basically.
Yeah.
And then avoid saturated fat. Then that's leading to this big worldwide obesity epidemic we have, I believe. And I was going to get to the food industry and get your input on how much of an effect you think the food industry has had to the general population, bearing in mind that 60% of westernized countries such as the UK where I'm from, the USA and Australia where we're at now, 60% of the population are overweight or obese or whatever, and that's quite a big number, quite a worrying statistic.
It's massive.
It is massive.
If you take into consideration that we're a developed society, an educated society, we have no excuse. There's no excuse for Triple M to call me up and say, Moodi, what are your thoughts on a 10-year-old child in Mount Druitt that died from any sleep because of lack of oxygen going to his brain from being overweight?
Yeah,
There's no excuse for that.
No.
And it's been embedded in our brains since the food pyramid was
the food pyramid.
plastered in every primary school in
Horrendous.
every developed country.
Yeah.
And if you look at the base of that food pyramid, which is upside down anyway, if you look at the base of that food pyramid, it says 7 to 9 servings from memory of bread, pasta, cereal. Now, if you tried to consume 7 to 9 servings of bread and pasta, you probably could if you wanted to gain some weight. The only
Serious
person I know
weight.
that probably wouldn't gain a serious amount of weight eating 7 to 9 servings of bread and pasta would be Michael Phelps. But
exactly.
if you're eating... what I was curious about, and this is what somewhat triggered my my curiosity when it came to nutrition, was why cereal was mentioned 7 to 9 times a day when it's a breakfast food. And I found that interesting because why would you eat 7 to 9 servings of cereal?
I know.
And it was at the base of the food pyramid.
Yeah.
And then I did a little bit more homework and discovered that the company that funded the food pyramid, and it's a very expensive venture. If I asked you to put a laminated poster inside every classroom in the country, that's a multi-million-dollar venture. And that venture was funded by Sanitarium, which is a cereal
it's
company.
the way, like, and going into like processed foods and artificial foods, and the market, the food industry, and it's just saturated with these rubbish kind of foods which have no benefit to us. And
Empty calories.
the food industry actually engineer these foods, not caring about nutrition and our health, but more focused on it being palatable and us actually enjoying the taste of these foods, right? Which then obviously is going to change like the biochemistry in your brain when it comes to the emotional attachment you get with these foods, right? And a lot of people are brainwashing to just eat them without realizing
Our
the
taste
amount of
buds are
clients I get.
brainwashed.
Yeah, and I get clients or new clients who genuinely think they're eating healthy. And then they eat processed foods out of package for the most part, and they think, this is healthy, that's healthy, it's got fiber in it, it's got this in it, but they don't realize that it's got a list as long as my arm of ingredients on it, and you know what I mean.
I call them pseudo foods because they're foods, they're edible,
Yep.
but they're not food.
No.
They're posing as something that is food, but in actual fact they're not, because they're manufactured products.
And a prime example is like bread and pasta. I know this is not like the most artificial food you can eat, but like bread and pasta is what the Italians used to eat back in the day when they were super poor.
Yeah.
To feed a lot of people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like there's no logic.
I had family that were eating bread with tea. So they would soak the bread in tea to stay satiated. That's how poor they were.
That's exactly it, mate.
That doesn't mean that it's a nutritious diet.
No, it's not nutritious, is
but
it really?
It's
compared to other foods.
What's interesting is that 2/3, if not 80% of a supermarket will contain these manufactured pseudo foods that have confused our taste buds, because we now think that food has to taste like a Snickers bar.
Yeah.
We don't know what food tastes like anymore, so we've got to rediscover our taste buds.
For sure.
And the thermic effect of food has been completely eliminated. Now, for the listener who does not, and you're not, I'm not saying this with any disrespect whatsoever, you're not born knowing what the thermic effect of food is. I didn't know what a macronutrient was. It's something that is learned. The thermic effect of food is how much energy your body requires to digest a certain food.
Yep.
Now, if something's manufactured or packaged, it eliminates the very need for the digestive system to put any effort in whatsoever. And if you're eating something that's manufactured, about 3% of what you consume is being used to digest that product. Let's take the analogy of a dinner that consists of 500 calories of manufactured produce that you've purchased from the supermarket, and your body would expend about, say, 3 calories at max 9 to digest it. So little to no effort. The other 497 calories, what's your body doing with that? Is it storing it? Then your brain says, okay, do I have to train harder? Do I have to train again? Do I have to eat less later on throughout the day? We've got enough on our plate. We don't want to think about that.
No.
If you eat 500 calories for dinner consisting of whole foods, your body is expending about 150 calories to digest that, the equivalent of a 20-minute power walk.
And like you said about the taste buds and stuff, and how we have to retrain our body and our mind essentially to eat these foods, to eat like stuff like veg, which people don't really eat enough of, and they find it really hard to eat, which is, I can relate to it because I used to be the same, like a good few years back, where I used to just, again, I was one of those ones who were brainwashed into eating cereal and and too much bread and pasta and whatever else, and not really getting enough nutrients in. And then once I got into the habit and forming, the good habits of eating healthy foods and getting into that and feeling good and paying attention to how I felt, and then now I actually search for the veg, because my body screams at me when I don't get enough veg in there.
And you hit the nail on the head when you said, your taste buds enjoy greens, and that comes with knowledge. I didn't know I'd never eaten anything green till my 20s. And once you understand the why, believe it or not, research has shown that your taste bud satiety towards that particular food group changes.
Yeah.
So the way you taste food changes according to your physiological need, and changes according to your understanding of the why. Now, if I tell you eat broccoli, my son, who's 8 years of age, knows that greens are good for you, and a burger, for instance, a manufactured fast food burger is bad for you.
Yeah.
However, if you understand why broccoli is good for you or why greens are good for you, and the fact, I'll give you an example. A cup of greens creates a caloric deficit because you're eating, say, 15 calories, and you're burning approximately 60 to 70 to digest it.
Wow.
So you're in a caloric deficit of, say, negative 50 or negative 55. 10-minute power walk.
Yeah.
I always give the analogy of the power walk because it's boring as hell. Now, if you can have the equivalent of a 10-minute power walk effectively just by eating your greens for dinner, your taste buds towards the greens will then change.
Yes, that makes
sense. And as you age, your physiological needs change, which change your taste bud satiety as well. So you'll notice that the things that you like as a child will change when you're older.
For sure, yeah.
And when you understand the why, your taste buds will change as well. So I guarantee you've had mates look at your plate and say,
yeah,
how are you eating that? It's
I
got
know,
no taste.
Me and Josh were saying this the other day. It's like
it's
you're
got no
the strange
flavour.
one.
It's got no flavour. How are you eating that?
But what's it come to? Because Josh mentioned this to me the other day, and it's like the world has got a bit crazy in the sense that you're now the odd one and the weird one and the one who gets looked at funny when you're eating healthy foods.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, I went over to the pavilion. I had some friends here in town from back home, and they all ordered the pizzas, and I was like, I'm just gonna have a salad, I don't want to have a pizza, because if I wanted a pizza, I'd have it, and occasionally I do have rubbish foods for my mind, as you know, every now and then it's socially cleansing, and it keeps you sane mentally, but never has any physical benefit having a pizza, and I'm aware of that.
As long as you understand that.
As long as you understand that, yeah.
You're ahead of the game anyway.
And it's just, I connect with how I'm going to feel afterwards. So it's like, oh, come on, just have a pizza. They're lovely. And I'm like, yeah, they do look lovely, but I know afterwards I'm going to feel like going to sleep.
And that's what
for
it
a start.
is. It's the ripple effect. And once you understand the ripple effect, and this is of good food and bad food, again, your taste bud satiety changes, and the choices that you make subconsciously will change. So, if you're eating something that's like a pizza, and I'm not talking about a whole food pizza, something that's manufactured, it has a negative ripple effect. So it may have artificial ingredients and preservatives in there that will potentially block nutrients 3 days later.
Wow.
So you might think, okay, I've eaten a pizza, now I'll eat an apple and I'll fix my problems. And that's the vicious cycle that we have. Our relationship with food is a disaster. Food is either a form of a reward or punishment.
Yes.
And that's not what it's about.
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly
food
the
is
kind
not
of message I'm trying to get across.
Food is not reward or punishment. Food is there for function and sometimes
fuel.
for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's okay, but you have to understand when and how much.
Exactly.
Now, if 80% of your diet or 85% of your diet is clean, you're going to look pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you're eating 85% rubbish, don't expect to look good.
No, exactly.
On the good news is one bad meal isn't going to make. If you did have that pizza that night, you're not going to wake up fat and overweight and looking like crap. You might feel a little bit lethargic,
exactly
but that's
it's
about
how you
it.
feel, innit? Because I've connected the dots in terms of how I feel now. It's like, I don't really want to do that, because I'll feel much better if I just have a salad. And the salad actually tastes good to me now, like you said, because I'm more programmed into that. Yeah,
you
exactly.
You can taste it.
Definitely.
On the other hand, if you have something that's good for you, don't expect to wake up with a six-pack.
No.
It's what you do. It's what you do more than what you don't do that ultimately will dictate the way you look and the way you feel.
For sure.
And people have forgotten that food dictates the way you feel, not just the way you look.
That's it.
We're in a world full of where it's just all about aesthetics.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was gonna get to. That. It's a great point because without blowing our trumpets, you and me, we tend to keep ourselves in good shape all year round, but not having to think about it now, because I can see by obviously the knowledge you've got, it's just by getting our body into a healthy state, by looking after our bodies and eating, for the most part, like you said, I'm probably in about the 85 to 90% bracket when it comes to eating healthy for the most part. You know, I eat 85, 90%. Yeah, exactly. But we managed to stay aesthetically in shape now. Well, I've noticed you are as well, right? But we managed to do it now. I do anyway, based on me just, seeking after good whole foods and looking after my body and not thinking about being in shape anymore now. It's come as a side effect. Like aesthetically, I'm kind of in the shape of my life now, and that's simply from just putting health a priority, feeling good, focusing on drinking more water, getting enough sleep, eating the right foods for the most part. And once you're consistent with that, it's crazy what happens, isn't it, Mood?
It's been, and there is no such thing as an off season. I've seen, like, you've been in the gym for a while now,
get to that too,
and you've been, your shape hasn't changed. There is no off season. There is no on season. And you're doing it because you enjoy it. I noticed that when I was competing, I stopped competing because I was up on stage saying, okay, this is what healthy is meant to look like, when it was quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Because being at a healthy percentage or healthy body composition, you can still look aesthetically pleasing, but what about happiness?
Yeah, exactly.
That's taken a back seat. So you've got...
And your social life and all the rest
of
it.
I'm not going to name and shame any people, but there are people out there that are flexing on Instagram with their abs and with 3 or 4 million followers and seeking help from people like myself or you or naturopaths, and because they haven't had their period in 5 years, and their endocrine system is a mess, they're infertile, and they're unhappy.
Exactly.
Like, just so you can be a certain percentage of body fat.
Yep.
Create something that's sustainable for you, because I always say to people, like, you and I could have the spouse of our dreams, the car of our dreams, the house of our dreams, but if we're hungry, we are not happy.
No, we're not. No, and that's what I noticed, because I've competed myself about 8 times now, and I got up to the pro level, and along the way I learned a lot, and I witnessed a lot in terms of the people I was competing against and stuff, and the kind of relationship they have with food, and the relationship that I had with food as well. When I had a terrible kind of, when I look back, it was like an eating disorder, where I would, you were probably more educated going into it than I was, but I was still learning along the way. And
how long was your prep?
My prep, so I done like a 6-week prep once. That was the shortest one I've done. 6 weeks.
6 weeks. And that's nothing in comparison to what people are doing 20 weeks these days, because they are getting that out of shape, and they can't use the same diet twice because of the yo-yo effect that they put their bodies through. You have to understand that a 5 kilogram discrepancy, whether it's up or down, takes your anatomy 12 months to adapt to. 12 months. So crazy. People are gaining 5 kilos after a comp, right? Sometimes 6 or 7 or 8. That takes 12 months to adapt to. So of course it's going to take you 20 weeks to prep for a comp.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to prep for, when I was competing in the INBA, I remember my prep going from anywhere from 10 to 14 days. And I said to myself, if I had to do what my peers were doing and go through a 20-week prep, I would not be in that sport. I would not be competing, because it's not worth it.
That's it. And as you say,
they're taking time off work to prepare for a competition that involves winning a trophy.
I know, exactly. That's it. Is it really worth it in the grand scheme of things? And the insecurity, I mean, a lot of people do it as well. This is what I was trying to get out to the listeners as well. I'm sure there may be a few who are thinking about competing, or have got friends who've competed, and it's just trying to get the message across and inform people that if you're going to go into it, you need to go into it for the right reasons,
For the right reasons, and do it gradually, do it slowly. Definitely. If you do it fast, your temperament's going to change.
Yep.
Because 85% of it, the way you think and the way you feel is dictated by how you eat. And how many people break up with their spouses, break up with their husbands and wives during prep. Some of them get back together after prep when they've had a refeed. Yeah. But that should not be the case. It shouldn't even be on the table. I can't believe,
because you know your stuff, and that just goes to show, right? You said, what was the percentage you said in terms of what you eat?
85%.
Wow.
Well, 85% of cognitive and physiological diseases are food related.
Wow.
They're micronutrient related. How many things are micronutrient related? How many things are not really diseases and are actually micronutrient deficiencies? We've gotten so caught up in proteins, carbs and fats because of the way things are labelled. We've forgotten about micronutrients. Well,
exactly.
When Australia,
if it fits your macros,
what's your thoughts on that? Mate, you know what? There's no. If you're going to follow it for aesthetic purposes, because that's the only benefit that I see, and as long as you're tracking your micronutrients, which a lot of people don't.
They don't.
then that's okay. But to tell me that a Pop-Tart is the equivalent of a fruit salad,
Exactly.
mate, who are you
It's
trying
an
to kid?
absolute
I
joke.
remember Phil Heath being interviewed, not even 2 years ago, maybe, and they asked him. I think it was Mark Lobliner that asked him, "What do you think about the If It Fits Your Macros community?" And he's like, "What's that?" He had no idea what it was.
Exactly.
And he said, the guys that think a Pop-Tart and, eating a sweet potato is the same as long as the carbs are the same. And he's like, what kind of nonsense is that?
Exactly.
And that's,
Gut flora, though, isn't it?
that's Phil Heath. And if it's coming out of he didn't even know what it was.
No.
Now, micronutrient deficiencies have been confused for diseases since the beginning of, the settlement of Australia.
Yeah.
Right, so 1788, half of Captain Cook's fleet was lost to scurvy. The government sold vitamin C capsules. Well, the public didn't know it was vitamin C, but the public sold what was alleged to be medication to the community for maybe 2 decades at the equivalent of what would be $2,000 a bottle today, right? And it was merely vitamin C tablets, but nobody knew that. Scurvy was simply a vitamin C deficiency, but scurvy is still, till today, called a disease. So how many other diseases are really just micronutrient deficiencies?
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at MS, all the cognitive disorders, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, they're all degenerative diseases of the mitochondria, which is the center of the cell.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And what's the fuel source of the center of the cell? It's vitamin K.
Exactly.
So is it really a disease or is it really a micronutrient deficiency?
Yeah.
And that's
So
what we have to
mitochondria
ask
dies,
ourselves.
basically, you die with it, don't
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The cells can't communicate with one another. That is
That's
the
right.
energy component of the cell. That is the furnace of the cell.
you? And the gut flora, like, to my understanding, this is something, don't quote me on this, but it's so complex in terms of what's going on inside us. And as you know, it's taken them a long time to do all the studies based on gut flora, and I'm finding it fascinating, some of the studies that are coming out now. But yeah, we have we're more bacteria than we are human, right? So we have more bacteria species in our body than there are animal species on the planet, right? That's what they're saying now based on all the new studies. I know obviously that's a bit vague, but goes to show how much is going on inside the body in terms of our microbiome and our gut flora inside us, which is purely determined by surely what we're putting in our body, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So give them, try and simplify if you can for the listeners, just gut flora and the impact in terms of what you eat.
I call it your first brain.
Okay.
I call the gut your first brain because your gut will dictate
Serotonin.
what happens with food. So if you're having once food is ingested, your brain will tell your body what you've eaten and the quantity of food you've eaten, the type of food that you've eaten, and release the gastrointestinal juices and enzymes necessary for breaking that food group down. That's what will happen.
Wow.
Now, if your gut health is disrupted, that entire system is disrupted.
Yeah.
So your body and your gut does not know what it's eaten. That's why bloating has become such a big thing. That's why not just bloating, but allergies and food intolerances have become such a big thing. People
That's
are
what I find
gluten
fascinating. You must see yourself now with we were having a young lad and stuff. All the kids with intolerances and stuff nowadays. Like, I mean, when I was in school, when I was in school, it was no one had, and this is even 20 years ago. No one had intolerances.
Everyone's
from what I can
intolerant.
remember.
I get
Why
people
is
coming
that?
into the cafe. Is this gluten free? Is this and a lot of them are genuinely, intolerant to dairy and intolerant to gluten, and that's okay.
Yeah.
If you are, and it's hereditary or if it's genetic, then by all means, eat according to that. To that allergy or to that to your circumstances. But if you're not, don't follow a diet that consists of no lactose and no gluten, and then ask yourself 3 months later why you're lactose and gluten intolerant.
Yeah, of course.
You've created an environment in your body, in your gut, whereby your body does not need to break down that particular food group anymore. So it will stop producing the enzyme necessary to break down that food group. And then, hence the intolerance.
Yeah, that's what I find so fascinating about the human body is how it literally is an adaptation machine. It will adapt to anything,
adapt to
right?
breaking down concrete, for God's sake. So if you eat concrete long enough, your body will figure it. That's how intricate the body is. It will figure out a way to break it down.
For sure.
It might not utilize it. It might not have any benefit to it, but it will figure it out. And if you stop consuming something, your body will stop producing the enzyme necessary. It's unnecessary work.
Yeah,
and the body won't release the enzymes and gastrointestinal juices, necessary to break down that particular food group.
Makes perfect sense. And what I did pick up on your Instagram the other day was one of your seminars you were doing. It was just a little snippet, and you mentioned about how we spend probably, you mentioned something like 6 hours a day breaking food down. Essentially, I mean, looking at American statistics is what I've gathered anyway. On average, the average person does about 4,000 steps a day in America right now. So that's like, 20, 30 minutes of walking. They're spending a hell of a lot more time eating than they are actually walking. But you mentioned about actually the 6 hour window or whatever it was, about roughly, just for argument's sake, about the amount of time our body's spending working hard, breaking down food, as opposed to actually, exercising or whatever it was. So if you can elaborate on that a bit, that would be great. The
sad thing is, a lot of people are, and this is what I want the listeners to stop doing. Stop eating while you're walking. I don't care how much you are in, how much of a rush you're in. Stop eating while you're walking. Sit down and have your food, because the rate at which food hits your esophagus, water hits your esophagus, whether it's liquid or solid, is not an accident when you're sitting. We used to have dinner as a family sitting down. Now we eat standing, we eat while we're walking, we drink while we're walking, we're always on the go.
On the move, yeah.
It's an absolute disaster.
What's your thoughts on walking after you've eaten, though? Because I've heard there's good benefits. If you look at longevity and stuff like that, in terms of Mediterraneans, Japanese people, they always tend to go on just a light walk after they've eaten. Do you think that has benefits for digestion?
It has benefits after the digestion process has commenced.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting down, the rate at which food hits your esophagus is different to when you're standing. And that's not an accident. When you're sitting down, food hits your esophagus at, say, 2.5 centimeters per second, slows down to 5 centimeters per second, speeds up to 3, and that's specifically the amount of time that it takes for your brain to register what you've eaten and how much you've eaten, so it can release the right enzymes and the right quantity of enzymes when the food hits your smaller and larger intestines and your stomach, to get the digestive system well underway and absorb the micronutrients. It's not just about preventing bloating. It's about absorbing the nutrients from the food. And that's what it comes down to.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And if you're standing, that speed changes. If that speed changes, your brain is not going to catch up to what you've consumed. And if it doesn't, then it creates gastrointestinal distress. And gastrointestinal distress is not just an issue of aesthetics. It doesn't just look bad. And it doesn't just create bloating, and and you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I wake up with a flat stomach, but by dinner time I look like I'm 6 months pregnant." It's not just an issue of bloating. If you are bloated, you are more than likely not absorbing the nutrients from the food. You are causing gastrointestinal distress. You are causing blockages in the arteries. You are solidifying the food that has become liquid in your stomach, in your intestines, going through your blood. You are increasing exponentially the likelihood of a stroke, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, etc. So there's nothing positive that comes from it. Sit your ass down and have your food, even if it takes 10 or 15 minutes. Let the digestive process start or commence, and then start drinking water afterwards and go for a walk. Don't drink while you're eating. No. Don't walk straight away, because drinking dilutes the enzymes in your stomach that are trying to do their job. Yeah. And you don't want to do that. You dilute those enzymes, they can't break the food down anymore. Exactly. So drink leading into a meal, start your food, recommence the drinking and the walking roughly 15-20 minutes after. And you'll eliminate gastrointestinal distress.
Wow. And on that topic, I was going to mention how important chewing your food is as well. I've started to really make a conscious effort now of actually trying to slow down when I eat and actually thinking about chewing my food. And, it's not just apparently it's not just a small part of digestion. It's actually quite a big part.
It's a massive part of, even...
Because we inhale our food, don't we?
We inhale it. We eat like alligators. We don't even chew our food anymore. But you know what? Even eating developed society, even our ancestors had it right. They understood that eating with your hands even had a purpose. Chewing a certain number of times had a purpose. They knew that it helped with digestion and it prevented gastrointestinal distress. Maybe they didn't know the scientific reasons as to the extent of the damage that it would cause if you didn't, but they had an idea as to the benefits of doing so. So let's take, for example, eating with your hands versus eating with a knife and fork. your fingertips actually release a flora when you touch food that activates the nutrients in the food and makes it more biologically available.
Wow. That is news to me.
Just touching the food.
Goes to show, doesn't it?
So, and that's
We didn't
and
have
that's
the
how
luxury of a
our
knife and fork and plate,
that's
did we,
how
back
our
in the day?
ancestors used to eat, and
Yeah.
and I get
A lot of people still do, though, innit? If you go to Thailand and stuff, and these indigenous tribes, they all
and
do.
I get a lot of naive people, telling me, why for example, the Asian community will eat with chopsticks, but we have knives and forks. Why are they still using chopsticks? Listeners, chopsticks were invented after the knife and fork. The caveman is capable. You can give an orangutan a fork, and he'd be able to use it, or she'd be able to use it, but not the Asian society used the chopsticks to differentiate between the animal and the human being, because it takes a human being to use chopsticks. It takes intellect to use chopsticks versus using a knife and fork. Chewing your food a certain number of times, your saliva plays a large role in breaking down and
Certain
activating
enzymes.
the nutrients in the food before it hits your intestines.
Yeah. I find it fascinating as well how we've kind of, again, we've been given a load of bullshit, to put it in layman's terms, when it comes to eating little and often. Remember, I used to do it leading up to shows and stuff, but people are still convinced that eating little and often and eating food every couple of hours is really, really important. It keeps your metabolism elevated and all this bullshit information we've been given. And I find it fascinating now how it's almost going back to ancient times, and all the new studies coming out now. It's like, okay, intermittent fasting, for example. Back in the day, 2 million years ago, we would sometimes make sense go possibly a few days without food.
Yeah.
We would eat what's available.
Yep.
And they've got some evidence to prove this as well. So it's just funny how now it's almost like and stuff like having saunas and having cold showers, all this new stuff coming through, which is it's information we've had for years, millions of years. So
it's millions of years, and that's the thing. It's not since the Paleolithic era 20,000 years ago. It's millions of years ago that we used to do our ancestors had it right. Our ancestors were semi-vegetarian, for God's sake.
Yep.
They were pescatarian. Most of our ancestors were pescatarian. Very rarely did they eat chicken and red meat. In some societies, it was actually banned to eat red meat more than once or twice a week. It was banned because they knew that it caused problems. It caused gastrointestinal problems.
Oh, really?
They didn't understand the science behind it or the extent of the damage to which it caused.
But at the same
However,
time, they would
they
get a
knew it
lot
was
of
bad.
nutrients. They would get a hell of a lot of nutrients, though, wouldn't they, from certain types of, like, obviously red meats, when we
If
go
it's
to the fats and
grass-fed,
stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if it's cooked in a certain way, if you overcook your meat, the only thing you're left with is protein. And that's the argument that I have even with organic meats versus non-organic meats. Yes, it has 100 grams of organic and non-organic chicken. Both have 30 grams of protein. But are we just eating it for the protein? What about the B vitamins in red meat?
For
What
sure.
about the creatine? What about the conjugated
All the
linoleic
micronutrients.
acid?
Yep.
The CLA that targets stubborn fat?
Exactly. And the
What
certain
about
types
that?
of...
And that's actually been banned. Last year, I got fined at customs for coming in with CLA.
Wow.
That's like finding me for having an apple.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you get? And it's actually banned. I said, why are you finding me $370 odd or something like that for a product that costs $11.99 at GNC in the US? And they said because it's banned in Australia. I said that's news to me. How do you ban an essential fat?
Yeah.
It's like
bonkers.
banning. It's the equivalent of fish oil.
It's crazy, man.
So they've banned that
How often
because
do you eat meat?
because they serve industry, not humanity. That's what it comes down
That's
to.
exactly what it comes down to,
It's-
isn't it? It's the money making.
they want us. If you're overweight, you need medication. You need help. You need, it causes diseases, and they give you these band-aid remedies
For sure.
through medications. When
Pills, here's
there's
some
a
pills.
cure for everything in food.
That's exactly it. And that's whilst we're on that topic now, I was going to see if you have any advice for people, listeners who are looking to lose a bit of body fat or maybe overweight, and they can't seem to get on the right tracks, because, like I said, there's a lot of bad information out there. What would be your kind of tips for someone who, is just generally overweight, looking to get started?
Approximately 95%, that high of a percentage of people that approach me that are overweight, or their weight is they're not commensurate with their height, so their skeletal structure is carrying too much weight on their frame, and they've got gout or arthritis, etc. Most of them aren't eating enough. It's the opposite. They're
Wow.
eating too little, so their body is has learnt their ghrelin hormone is through the roof.
That's right.
And their resting metabolic rate.
What is the ghrelin hormone? Is the hunger hormone, right?
That's the hunger hormone.
And what about the leptin levels? That's the satiety hormone, right?
Leptin is the satiety hormone, but they play more of a role than just satiety and hunger.
Yeah, for sure.
They dictate basically your resting metabolic rate. So leptin will, basically allow your body to function on 3,000 calories a day, and that's a lot more fun. Being able to eat 3,000 calories a day to survive,
definitely,
and then being able to eat more because you train. That's what you want, because that's going to keep you happy. But if your body is rife in leptin, in ghrelin, it will learn to function on 500 calories a day, and that's why intermittent fasting does work. But creating a lifestyle,
it's another stress on the body, though, unless you get your body into a healthy state and start eating the right foods. It is a stress on the body, isn't it?
It's a stress on the body, and you've got to make the right choices.
Yep.
And you've got to eat an abundance of food. With intermittent fasting, the problem is the rules have changed for that. And I did an interview on A Current Affair not long ago regarding intermittent fasting, and the rules for intermittent fasting have changed by the creator of the diet.
Would you call it? You would call it a diet?
I wouldn't say him the creator of the diet, because it's been around since the beginning of time.
Exactly.
He's changed the rules 4 times. What? And they asked me, why do you think he's changed the rules 4 times? Well, clearly because people are hungry. Eating 500 calories a day, your body will learn how to function on your body is very, very intelligent. Your body will learn how to function on 500 calories a day. That's not a very good thing, because then when you consume 2,000, with the other 1,500, your body's going to store that as fat, because physiologically we're not capable of doing anything else.
No. I find that interesting that people come to you and they're not normally eating enough, so they're eating very little calories. I don't experience that very often. Maybe I do. Actually, it's probably half and half, I've noticed. But anyway, when they come to you, what would be generally, if they're not eating enough? And I guess for the most part, they're not probably eating the right foods either, I guess, is it? And
absolutely. I would say, and when you say the word diet to them, as soon as you say to them, I'm going to put you on a diet, they freak out.
I hate that word.
It's got a negative connotation associated. The word diet is merely what you eat to sustain life.
Yeah.
The diet of a lion is what a lion eats to survive. So it's not, that's all it is. So the first exercise that I would like somebody to, and listeners, do this at home. Go on this so-called diet, start your clean eating, and do it tomorrow. You're because if you've heard this today, you're accountable tomorrow. You're not accountable from Monday. There's nothing special about starting a diet on Monday. You're accountable now. Once you know something, you're accountable immediately for not only applying what you know, if it's good for you, but also sharing that information, which is what we're doing and what you're doing here today.
Thank you.
So what you need to do is, what I would like you to do for homework is get 2 pieces of paper out. On one piece of paper, write down all the foods that you're now going to stop eating. On the other piece of paper, write down a list of all the foods that you've been neglecting subconsciously. For example, when's the last time you ate a yellow capsicum? When's the last time you ate something that's, green in colour? Write down the list of those whole foods, and I guarantee you that list of whole foods is going to be a lot longer and a lot harder to commit to on a day-to-day basis than the list of foods that you now have to avoid. And that's the first thing you should do. Fix up your pantry, clean out your pantry of rubbish, clean out your fridge, go grocery shopping after you've eaten. Don't go grocery shopping hungry, because you end up buying a whole bunch of stuff you don't need and don't want. And then fill up your pantry and fill up your fridge with whole foods. And there are so many different, even snacks these days. The amount of healthy snacks that exist these days, there really is no excuse. Before, you used to have to source, specialty supermarkets to source these, ingredients and whole foods and organic produce. You can find it at Coles and Woolies now. Woolies has the macro brand. Coles has their own organic brand. Why are we eating anything else? It does not make any sense.
Does it?
Avoid the pesticides, avoid the rubbish that goes with it, and just use colours to dictate what. Ask yourself, when's the last time I ate something yellow? When's the last time I ate something orange? Don't be ashamed of approaching something with a layman type approach, because even elite athletes are educated that way.
Yeah,
See, we're not born knowing what micros and macros are. So nature has made it easy for us. Use colours to dictate the way you eat, and eat whole foods, and your resting metabolic rate will increase. You don't need to start a detox on Monday. Eating whole foods is a natural detox anyway. So if you start eating whole foods for a week as of Monday, within 3 or 4 days, your body will have detoxed itself. Your alkaline, and people talk about their pH balance and everything else. Eating whole foods, guess what? Your acidity levels go down. Your pH balance is regulated, and your body's in a more the benchmark that you create for your body is where it should be at.
Great, that was well put. You put that really well. I really found that really fascinating, and that's some great tips there for the listeners. One more thing I was going to ask actually is because a lot of people, you just cleared up everything when it comes to health and people eating the right foods to whatever their goal may be. It's going to assist them a lot if they just focus on eating more whole foods and less processed foods, really. As you say, eating with your eyes and eating the right, having colour on your plate and eating more fruit and veg and more organic foods. But obviously everyone wants to look good nowadays. So
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to people who just really focus on, right, I want to get in shape aesthetically? Is there any particular advice you give in terms of training, nutrition?
If it's from an aesthetic standpoint, I don't think you should, whether you're eating for function or for aesthetics or for health, the way you eat should not change. More so, the approach that you take in the gym should
That's
change.
what I was going to get at.
Yeah. So if you're training for aesthetics, stop being concerned with your 1 rep max and trying to compete with your favorite Instagram model and what she or he bench pressed or deadlift on Instagram for their PB. No one cares. That's powerlifting. I'm not saying that it's bad. It's just a different type of sport. Now, a powerlifter's objective is to get the weight from point A to point B. Yes, there's technique involved because with technique you can, do things a lot safer. But if you're training for aesthetics, focus on how the weight is getting from point A to point B. Focus on the eccentric part of the movement. Focus on the isometric contraction. Focus on these things. And if you don't know what they are, research, do some homework. You're accountable. And it's not hard to do that these days with the World Wide Web.
YouTube and stuff, yeah. Exactly.
It's the information is there's a lot of it out there, but there's also a lot of rubbish out there. So put your bullshit filter on, and assess what information is actually useful, and start approaching your training differently. Train for your objectives. Don't follow a blueprint. There is no one size fits all. Downloading somebody else's training program isn't going to make you look like them. Your muscle insertions are different.
Genetics.
Your body shape is different. Your genetics are different. Your body type is different. Train for you. What are you trying to achieve? And create a training program, or get an expert, or get a trainer who knows their stuff, such as yourself, and get them to create a program for you and follow that. And when it comes to aesthetics and looking good, which is what most people are looking for these days, like I said, it's about how the weight is getting from point A to point B, more so than what you're lifting. Your brain and your body has got it's not reading the weights on the dumbbells. It's not reading figures. It responds to stress. You expose your body to stress, you will create an environment of hypertrophy, hyperplasia, and all and these are just, in layman's terms, that's creating muscle tone and reducing body fat and increasing muscle mass, improving your body composition. That's what it's ultimately about.
That's it. So in order to get to where you want to get aesthetically, guys and girls, as Moodi just put it correctly there, you need to be lifting weights with good technique, and obviously with the nutritional advice he gave, just try and take that on board. And
cut back on the cardio, guys, man.
Yes, thank you. I was going to get to that.
Do some. Focus on weights. Cardio, you're going to burn fat whilst you're doing it. A good hard weight session will burn fat for up to 84 hours. So for 3.5 days, your resting metabolic rate has increased exponentially.
Exactly.
So you're burning fat while you're sleeping. Your
it.
resting metabolic rate has increased while you're sleeping.
That's it.
That's what you want, and that's why weights will always be more effective than doing cardio. People will say HIIT cardio is the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, HIIT
splitting hairs.
HIIT cardio is great. I'm not saying not to do it.
Yeah, it has
but
its
just
place.
be conscious of what you're doing when you are doing something like HIIT cardio. Yes, you will be burning fat after you jump off that treadmill or off that cross trainer, but HIIT cardio is also known to increase ghrelin. So if you're hungry or if you're ravenous after a HIIT cardio session, don't wonder why. Learn why.
For sure. And for every pound of lean muscle you build, I think it's obviously there's lots of variances, but roughly 30 to 50 calories extra. So 1 pound of muscle will burn roughly an extra 30 to 50 calories.
Yeah, so you're creating an
on
environment where you're not only getting rid of your problems, but you're creating an environment physiologically where it's harder for that fat to then come back.
Exactly. Muscle tissue is expensive. The best way I try and describe it to people is muscle tissue is expensive to keep on your body. It costs a lot of calories. So by you building muscle, essentially, to break it down for you, you're going to elevate your metabolism, and gradually your body's just going to start oxidizing fat faster at a faster rate. And you're going to benefit your health in later life as well, longevity, bone density, and all the rest of it. So, yeah, great. That was awesome.
And you get to eat more. It's a lot more fun.
Exactly. You get to eat more, and that's, a lot more fun for sure. I agree.
A person who's eating and satiated is a happy individual.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm one of those people now, thankfully, and I think you are as well, Moodi. Yeah?
Absolutely. It's
a great place to be. But no, where can the listeners find you, buddy? And also, I wanted to big up your kitchen. I'm sat here right now in Moodi's health food cafe in Coogee in Sydney, and the food here is absolutely incredible. I tried the waffles the other day, and I'm very picky in terms of, I want to know what's going in there. But when I found out it was you owning this place, I thought, right, it's going to be the real deal.
I'm very pedantic, man. I'm pedantic. I've bought out my business partners. Just man, if I go into business with you and you go from rolled oats to quick oats, I'll get rid of you.
Yeah, exactly. You don't miss a thing, do you?
No.
He's like a hawk.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to, if I won't eat it, I won't serve it. If you want to learn more about what I do, there's the website, which is www.moodi.dennaoui.com. The surname is a bit hard to pronounce, even harder to spell. It's got every vowel in it. It's MOODIDENNAOUI. But if you type that into Instagram, man, there's enough content on my Instagram to create books. And that's not something.
Your Instagram is the same name as
it's the same, yeah, at Moodi Dennaoui. And cool. It's not something that I've said. I was talking to Harlequin and HarperCollins, who were looking to create a 6-book series. And they said, with the amount of information that you've given away on Instagram, the first 3 books are already done. So instead of spending money buying books and trying to acquire information, just simply jump on my Instagram page and read what's underneath the food posts, and there's enough information there to educate you. It's what I want to get rid of social media every day, and the thing that keeps us going. And huge thanks to the people that send those direct messages. They matter. It's not it's not the athletes or the celebrities that I look forward to hearing from. It's when I get a direct message from somebody from a country that I can't even pronounce, and says, thank you so much. Your post has helped my wife, who's in remission from cancer, to digest food, who wasn't able to digest food prior to understanding food combinations. Thank you so much. And that will motivate me to, keep going and doing what we're doing. And that's what motivates us.
That's amazing. And that's kind of my objective as well, is just to try and keep learning and keep evolving, and just try and inform people as much as I can with the correct information, really. And just trying to drop knowledge bombs and just generally just help people, just
and
when it comes to
that's
health.
what you're doing here with this podcast. You don't have to. You could finish. You can clock off. At the end of your shift at the gym, and then just call it a day.
Yep.
But you're making that extra effort to educate the people around. You're changing the benchmark of what the expectations are for other people, setting the precedence for what being in the health and fitness industry is really about. And that's what if you can't help others and use your passion to pay your bills, then I'd reassess what I'm doing for a living.
For sure. Oh, awesome. So go check Moodi out. Go check out his website. It's definitely worth a look. It's an awesome website. And go follow him on Instagram. And thanks very much, mate, for coming on to the show. It's massively appreciated to have someone like yourself on here. So big up, Moodi.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Martin. It's it's something that I look forward to.
Yep.
And sharing content, I believe if it doesn't become knowledge until you share it. So,
for sure.
Guys, listeners, this is if you're on the other end of the table having this conversation with me, I'm here anytime, any day of the week, and mate, it's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks very much, mate. We'll be in touch anyway. That's not the end of it for sure. Plenty more to come. And yeah, go check out my Instagram at Martin Silva Fitness, and also my YouTube channel, which is also Martin Silva Fitness. Don't forget to subscribe to my podcast, Optimize Your Body with Martin Silva. And if you could give me a 5-star review and leave a comment, that would be amazing. Thanks very much. Over and out.